lecture series. I'm Russ Littlefield, and I'm currently serving as president of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. For this series of talks, we have invited many residents from Lake County in Central Florida to speak on social justice issues and environmental issues that may make a difference in your lives. All of our speakers are free to express their opinions, but please know that the opinions expressed are not necessarily the opinions of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. Unitarian Universalism has a long history of working for social and environmental justice everywhere in the world. And our congregation is proud to be sponsoring this lecture by Lauren Ritchie, titled, "How Do We Keep Lake County Government Accountable?" Before we welcome her, however, I need to turn this over to Val Rosado, who is a member of our congregation and also a member of our technical team, who will tell you more about how to participate in tonight's lecture. Val?
Hi, welcome. We're glad you could come tonight. Our speaker, Lauren Ritchie, will entertain questions and comments during her presentation. So if you would like to speak, someone from our tech team will recognize you if you raise your hand. You can raise your hand by waving at the camera, or for those of you that are used to using Zoom, you may be able to find this a little easier, but in the participants window, there's usually a little icon towards the bottom for raising your hand. And our tech team will be on the lookout for those electronic hands and also people waving hands. If one of the tech team calls your name, please unmute yourself. There will be the word mute and a little microphone somewhere on your screen. It depends on whether you're using a laptop, a tablet, or a phone, but usually it's at either the bottom, the top, or the right side that you can mute and unmute yourself. When you finish speaking, please be sure to mute yourself again so that we don't have a lot of extraneous sounds happening. There are two views that you can use with Zoom. I know some of you are old hands at this point in using Zoom. Others of you may be new. We have speaker view and gallery view. In speaker view, the speaker is more prominent on the screen, and there are smaller pictures of other people who are in the room. In gallery view, again, it depends on the device you're using. You may see 4 pictures, 9 pictures, 25, up to 49, depending on the size of your screen and the operating system. And you can switch back and forth. If you look for the little word view, and under that, if you click on it, you'll see speaker view and gallery view, and you can go back and forth from those. Right now I'm in speaker view, and if I click on gallery view, now I see all of the people. And some of you may see what I see, or you may see something different. It depends on how your machine is set up. Anyway, we hope you enjoy it, and we hope you'll ask some good questions. Back to Russ.
Thanks, Val. It is a tradition with Unitarian Universalists to light a chalice before religious services and before important meetings. The chalice is the logo of the Unitarian Universalist Association, of which our congregation is a member. For Unitarian Universalists all over the world, it symbolizes our commitment to truth and social justice and to building a kinder, more compassionate world. So I'm going to light our chalice now. Tonight, I am excited to announce that the UU congregation of Lake County has been inspired to create an award that honors our chalice and the principles that we stand for. Unitarian Universalism is a religion based on deeply held principles that we covenant to promote. We live by them. We call them our 7 principles. Our principles call on us to honor human dignity, to respect the right of conscience, to promote democratic processes, to practice social justice and anti-racism, to search out the truth, and to protect the environment of our fragile planet. The speakers that we have had in this series all exemplify one or more of these ideals of behavior. Tonight's speaker, Lauren Ritchie, is no exception. For 40 years, she worked as a reporter and editor for the Orlando Sentinel, and in 2002, she became a columnist for the Lake Sentinel. She is well known for lambasting politicians and public figures, but she also points out those deserving of praise. She is known by her readers to detest shoddy thinking. As she expressed it in one of her columns, I am particularly annoyed by people who are unable to think critically. Stop reading trash on the internet that is written by uneducated idiots. Engage, be a critical reader, be a savvy voter. Democracy won't last if you shirk your responsibility. But besides taking on public figures and pointing out poor thinking, Lauren writes with compassion about those in society who are too frequently overlooked and given up on, such as the elderly and the homeless and the mentally disabled and the abused and neglected, especially children. She has not hesitated to call out racism. She wrote persistently about the effort to bring the bronze Kirby Smith statue from the Capitol building in Washington to Lake County. She not only opposed it, but went further in advocating not just pardoning, but exonerating the Groveland Four. Lauren has also displayed a commitment to the environment. I'm sure that many of you remember the commentaries that she did on sand mining in Lake County and on water issues. It is for these reasons that the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County has decided to name her as the first recipient of an award we are establishing, honoring those who have notably advanced our principles. Although we cannot physically give her an award tonight, her name will be entered on a plaque that we will hang on the wall of our church. And when we can safely enter our building again, we hope Lauren will join us for a ceremony celebrating her achievements. As for tonight, we are indeed honored to have Lauren here to speak to us about how we keep Lake County government accountable. Lauren?
Russ, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, I had no idea, and I am honored to accept your award. It just seems like we have so much in common as to how we think and how we'd like to see things go and how government should operate. And I also want to thank you all for getting me through this Zoom meeting, because I'm kind of a Zoom virgin. I've never done this before. So if I screw up, hey, just call me on it. I'm supposed to talk to you tonight about a story, well, about how to keep government accountable. Yeah. I spent 40 years trying to do that, and I don't think I got very far, but every once in a while you can catch them at something. But today, if you would have asked me to speak about this issue 5 years ago, I could easily just have stood up and spoke for 2 hours. But that's not the case today. And it's a whole lot harder to keep government accountable today than it was a year, 2, 3, 4 or 5 ago. I'm going to read you just a paragraph or two from a story that was on the front page of the Orlando Sentinel yesterday. And it has a headline that says, "The state tries to keep report from public." And when I see headlines like that, oh man, they just light me up, because this state has what's considered the best public records law in the nation. If it's written down, it's yours. I mean, yes, there are exceptions, but they're not wacky, and they're not going to be anything that makes you go, oh, they should let that. The name of a rape victim. I mean, who needs that particularly? It's stuff like that. But here's what this said. This story was about a White House task force that put out a weekly report to each state talking about what their situation was with COVID, what they should be doing in the next time period, and so forth. And here's just a couple of paragraphs from it. For nearly 5 months now, the task force, which was formed earlier this year and is chaired by Vice President Mike Pence, has been sending a detailed COVID-19 report to all state governors. But Florida is among more than a dozen states to withhold those reports from the public. On October 16th, after the Orlando Sentinel asked Governor Ron DeSantis' office for the latest task force report, it took getting the Sentinel's lawyers involved and 5 workdays before the state released the October 11th task force report on Thursday. The report covers the week of October 5th, and it's not clear if the document is the latest available. It's also not clear whether DeSantis has followed through with the recommendations, how he incorporates the report into his pandemic strategy, or how widely it is distributed among other governments and institutions. This, folks, this is a hint. What I'm telling you is that it has become very, very difficult to hold government accountable by yourself. Now, when I worked for the Senate, it was a wonderful introduction, but I need to tell you that I did retire in February. The Orlando Sentinel offered me a buyout, which was a full year's salary, and that was pretty doggone tempting, so I took it. And I've left colleagues who are now stranded back at the Sentinel with not a whole lot of lawyer support and are just working themselves to the bones. So it comes down to, is this about the most important thing we need? Is this what we're going to spend lawyer money on? So if an organization the size of the Orlando Sentinel is asking that question, then, I've got news. This is not a simple process. What that story just described never, ever would have occurred in previous administrations. They might fuss, they might piss and moan, they might carry on a little bit, but in the end, they're going to pony you up the document that you're entitled to see. That's not true anymore. So just know that setting off on this journey it's going to be harder than you think. And I'm in the gallery view, so I can see that my across the street neighbor, Diana Reed, is here with us tonight. And she can we'll get you to tell your story in a little bit here, but she's been fighting a case, and I mean, it's been crazy. She's learned that if you don't ask for exactly the document that you want, they just look at you like you're some kind of an idiot, and they don't give it to you. I mean, she's just learned all about how public records really do work. You know, and not to just go on and bash President Trump, because I'm not here to do that. But what's happened in the past 4 or 5 years in regard to the press is not just the companies, the news companies across the United States have been taking a beating because, well, they have. But the biggest beating is because people like Trump are just thrilled to say that, you know, what we've printed is, quote, fake news everywhere. It's just nonsense. And all it is all that kind of talk is designed to erode your trust in people who do this for a living and do it well. Now, I'm not going to tell you that, you know, your next door neighbor's 40-year-old son who can't hold a job and is sitting up in the 3rd floor bedroom of his mama's house with his super fast computer playing games and putting out whatever the heck he thinks he ought to put out, you know, and declaring that it's the, you know, Lake Gem News or whatever. No, that's not what I'm talking about. You have to, this is all part of that think critically thing. You have to think about where you're getting your news from and what kind of bias that group might have. And certainly there is just, you know, a lot of these websites just run by crazies. This is not real news. But what's happened is partly the fault of people like Trump who think that newspapers shouldn't be trusted. But you know, it's also partly a paper's fault. And notice I haven't included TV in this. God love them, but you know, as far as I'm concerned, TV is entertainment. Newspapers are serious news. And part of what we did for years is just screen out the kooks. I mean, we never gave kooks a platform. So you didn't read about kooks. You didn't read that they think that the Democrats are behind a child sex porn operation and all this kind of nonsense. So it was silent. Today, it's not silent. Thank you, World Wide Web, because the internet has given the kooks a platform, and heaven knows they're using it. You know, the only thing I could ever find, and listen, I'm seeing all these little microphones that have little lines through them, which means you all have muted yourself, and I know they told you to do that, but y'all just jump in here anytime you want, because I'm just used to going back and forth with people. So, you know, when you feel the urge, come on in. But the only thing I could ever figure out as a columnist to keep people reading what I wrote was to get it right. And that's the way to build trust. I mean, lots of people in Lake County did not like my viewpoint. And that's fine, because this is America and we all get to have different viewpoints. But when I researched something, I made sure that it was correct. And if it wasn't correct, I fixed it. As much as it hurt, I did and would continue to do that, because that makes you a trustworthy source of news. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat on the phone and just talked with somebody about, or sent them a document and just said, look, here's where this came from. Read it yourself. Tell me, tell me what you think about it. So now, however, it's getting harder and harder to get the facts. And once you get the facts, it's getting harder to get them out there, because you too are going to be part of that platform called the internet, unless you have access to something like the Orlando Sentinel, which not too many people do.
Lauren, I'm gonna take your advice and jump. Can I do that?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Who am I talking to?
This is Henry. I'll recognize other people if they want to speak as well after this, but I thought I'd start here and just ask you if there's a reliable source of factual news or information in Lake County on a public basis, and I would say newspaper, maybe that's one way, that we could rely on to get information about what's going on in Lake County. Like it could be a newspaper or some other source that we could rely on as being accurate, not politically biased, and factual.
Good luck with that. Yeah, I don't think so. The Orlando Sentinel does not have a bureau up here anymore for the first time since 1920. The Daily Commercial, I think, has a couple of kids that work for them, young people that, don't have any experience. Certainly, like the Sentinel, they've pretty much shuffled, all of their senior people to downtown, or just shuffled them off. I don't think there's really a good source of news here, and I feel bad about that. In fact, just as a sidelight, Henry, I'll tell you that I've talked to friends about maybe just starting a website, but then, oh my gosh, that's like work, and I am really enjoying this retirement thing. So I'm gonna stick with the retirement for a while and kind of see where it goes. But no, I don't think so. Do you think so? Do you find that there's a good?
No, I don't know.
You don't?
I suppose is why I asked the question. The commercial seems to be limited, the daily commercial, and perhaps one way people could get information would be from the minutes and other reports of government commissions like the Leesburg City Commission or the Lake County Board, places like that.
Oh,
off their
yeah.
websites. I don't know. Okay, you're cringing at that as well. So what do you think about those?
Yeah.
Sources?
Well, here's the problem. And my apologies to anybody who's out there listening to this, who's in government in some way. But what I've found in 40 years of covering local governments is that they pretty much just don't want you to know. They're not going to help you find out. And I think that that's a problem because, this is so close to you. These are your neighbors who are running for office in towns and in the county government. This is just not that big a place, and they ought to be on your side, not on the side of government. And I have not found that to be the case. Now, that said, there's some stuff you can do. I'd start by deciding which governments I want to watch, and then you go to their website, figure out what day they meet, and about 3 or 4 days before that, you'll see, if you poke around in there somewhere, you'll see an online agenda and it will tell you a little bit about what they're going to talk about. I want to give you an example today. Well, before I do that, I'll say, try that for a month. Just get used to things. Look at it, see what kind of stuff comes before them, how they handle it. Learn what the patterns are in local government and how local government functions, because really, most people don't know how it functions. And even people who get elected to these boards, get on these boards and have to go and get training to figure out how it works. I mean, the first thing you should know is, number one, you can't talk to another elected official on the board where you're serving. That's a violation of state law. If you talk to a person about business that's likely to come before that board. So if you're a Eustis City Commissioner, you can't just call another Eustis City Commissioner up and go, hey, how you gonna vote on this, Joe? No, that's illegal. And second, pretty much anything you put to paper is available if the person asking knows how to ask for it in order to get it. And that's because of Florida's sunshine law. Yeah, Henry?
Yeah, and there's another question.
Did you have something else?
Wendy wants to ask it herself. Wendy, do you want to ask your question
Sure.
about PR?
I unmuted like someone told me to. I was wondering about NPR, National Public Radio. They have the station that covers, I think it's mostly Central Florida. What's your opinion about the quality of that news coverage?
I love NPR. I think the quality is quite good. The problem with NPR is they're not dedicated to covering Lake County. And we were just kind of chatting about what's available here in Lake as opposed to what's available region-wide. I do like NPR. I think they strive to do the best they can. They're willing to admit when they've said something wrong. I think the ones that I just find lack of credibility are these people with, big agendas, and they're just loaded one direction or the other. So much of what they write's just self-serving. I could think of two examples. Romac Lumber used to have a blog, which was probably the single most self-serving thing I've ever read. I mean, they used that blog to go against and promote anti, what do you call those things? Fees that you have to pay when you build a new house, to cover the cost of growth and impact fees. Right. And they didn't want impact fees. Well, of course they don't want impact fees. It means it costs more for their customers to build a house. Their customers make less money. They buy less from Romac. I mean, it just goes on that way. Those people are not a reliable place to get information. But if you start with these agendas, I'm going to give you an example. I just poked through the City of Eustis's October 15th agenda. How many people here are from the Eustis area? Can you some of y'all wave? There's a few, huh? But not everybody. Let's see. Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah. Okay. Hi, Dawn Stearns. I see you. Okay, but not everybody. But let me just tell you what I saw in this agenda. First of all, you have to realize that the people who run Eustis would be happy to sell their mother in order to get more growth in the city of Eustis. I mean, that's their stated open. I mean, they're not hiding this fact. These are people who tried to annex 19 miles of property to make it the city of Eustis. And when I talked to the city manager about it and said, dude, 19 miles, seriously? I mean, come on. And he said, a perfectly straight face, this man said, this is done all over America. Look at the city of Chicago. I'm just like, yeah, okay, whatever. But
Lauren, there's another question.
Sure.
Alexandra,
Go
do you
ahead.
mute and ask your question?
No, I didn't have a question. I don't know how I hit it, but I put my hand up because I was trying to answer her question. But the truth is, excuse me, but I'm very, very engaged in this. I'm very interested about all this. I'm not sure where to do something. But I do feel like the information, rather than making the internet a problem, I'd like to see it serve us better on a local level. Right now, it services.
I think everyone would.
Right, but I think that's not, somebody's not going to give it to us, and certainly not Facebook or any of that. They have no interest in any of that. Okay, so to me, I'm trying to figure out a way to see if on a local level, individual governments, small governments can make something like Facebook work for us. I'm sure you're only looking at my picture.
They could. Alexandra, they could if they wanted to, absolutely. But they don't really want to.
No, they
don't. Let me just give you this example from the city of Eustis's October 15th meeting, which is coming up, or which was, a week ago or whatever. On their agenda, I just cruised down through it and I found 3 things that interested me. Okay, so one was the CARES Act money that's coming from the federal government, as we all know, for COVID, was on the budget. And it stated they had spent $31,000 and now they're getting another bunch of money. And well, what are we going to do with it? Well, there was all this gibberish. Then it stated that it would go into like some 14-digit account. The hell is that? I don't know, but it's $590,000. So you're looking at more than $500,000 coming from the feds to Eustis, and they are extremely careful not to state on their website where that money will go and how it will be used. We're going to put it in this 14-digit account. Thank you for asking. So I don't know what they did with it. Also on October the 15th, they were detailing a bit of information about, they were looking for approval, I think it was, of to build a downtown parking garage. Now, this isn't cheap. This is a $4.8 million investment for 255 spaces. It has 3 stories. And if you want the fancy brick accents, you can vote for the extra $255,000 to give little brick accents to the outside of this parking garage. And some things you look at, you just go, what? And that was one of them to me because it mentioned it had 1 elevator. 1. So what happens when disabled people are parked on the 3rd floor and the elevator decides to go out that day? Just bad planning. And so some of this stuff is, if you just look down through the budget, you can see it's just a bad idea. The other thing going on October the 15th was discussion of something called a Writ of Certiorari. Now, the average person isn't going to know what a Writ of Certiorari is, but what it is, if you do this long enough, is a request from a person or an organization to a judge to take up an issue. It's not a lawsuit. It's just a request to look at something. Most often these writs are filed by prisoners in federal or state prisons. They file these writs of certiorari asking a judge to look at their incarceration and declare it to be illegal. This is like their favorite thing to do because they got nothing to do in prison. So they're just going to go and type these things up and file them. That's not the case with this one. This one has to do with like 6 or 7 people who are Eustis or right next to Eustis citizens who are objecting to the city of Eustis approving a 49 lot subdivision near Bates and Estes Road. And the cert claims that it's in contravention to city land plans. In other words, they just blew off their own land plans and approved it because, well, we're back to the same issue, which is this is a very pro-growth group of people. And like I said, they would sell their mama to get growth. So here we are, ignoring what we've got going on in land plans and what's been approved and so forth. And these folks did the right thing. They actually knew this was coming and they packed the room. And if there is one thing you can do to hold a government accountable, and it just makes their palms sweat. That's right. Yes, ma'am.
Show up.
You just show up. And you bring every neighbor, everybody who can stand up for 20 seconds and say, I lived out here my whole life. I don't want this thing next to me. And I'm going to remember this. And I mean, that makes them absolutely just drives them crazy. So, that was good. But like I said, this is not so simple these days. So this group just blew them off. Now what's happened is this small 6 or 7 group of citizens has filed this writ of certiorari asking a county circuit judge, and in fact, it's the chief circuit judge, a woman named Heidi Davis. They've asked Heidi to tell the city they have to follow their own land rules. You can't just break your land rules because somebody wants to come in and put up 49 houses on quarter-acre lots where you can see the next guy's bathroom. So this judge looked up, and this was 16 or 18 pages that included a whole bunch of the city's land rules and so forth. And the judge ruled on the 29th of September that the city should show cause as to why they shouldn't be turned down. They shouldn't be made to reverse themselves.
Yeah.
Now, that probably wasn't cheap. I don't know what it cost them, but it's an Orlando attorney. It's probably $5,000 or $6,000 right off the bat. Yep, Diana's shaking her head because I know she's been looking for an attorney. And, they've basically made you go out and spend your money. There's some alternatives to that. And I used to use them quite frequently. Number one is just embarrass the hell out of these people when you figure out what they're doing. And unfortunately, so many of them have just no shame at all anymore. It's impossible to embarrass them. Hiring a lawyer is a great way. I would just excoriate somebody on social media. I'd create a page. I'd invite everybody and their brother to come look at it. But the truth is that in the end, there's really only one way to hold public officials accountable. And that's to stage a coup and get them out.
Right.
15 years ago, a group of people who lived in the area, Scott Ailes, who became the mayor at one point, Ken LaRoe, who was the founder of First Green Bank, and several other folks got together. And some of those folks are lawyers, so they didn't have to, go and hire their own. And they basically got people elected. And this was after, they tried everything. But there's still that open to you.
Well, I'm
which
kind of at the
get-
understanding that it'll always be that way. It's always that way. It just varies from generation to generation. Do you know what I mean? We have this set of problems that we look at, and then behind us 10 years,
Right.
20 years from now comes the next group. They're going to have the same stuff in front of them. So to my way of thinking, it's just that we do something rather than nothing. And that we figure out the way to be most effective is with the people that we have, or the attention that we have.
Right.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well, I think,
No,
go ahead, Henry.
Another question, a little bit backtracking.
Yeah.
This is a general question on some of what you were talking about with the Eustis City Commission. And that is growth for the area generally. Are you a proponent of growth in the Eustis and Lake County area or not?
I'm a proponent of slow growth and growth that's planned, and plans that are reasonable, and elected officials who stick to their plans.
yeah.
I think, if they plan this out and the community comes together and agrees on plans, then live by them. What I don't care for is just this wild growth where, like if you drive down to Claremont and you look around, I mean, it's hills and hills of, quarter-acre lots, cookie-cutter houses.
We have another person here. Kristen, did you have a comment on this?
I do. Lauren, thanks for being here tonight. I've heard your name for the whole time I've been down in Florida, and I'm looking forward to meeting you.
Thank you.
I found the Lake County UU Church about a year ago, and I'm a retired county planning director. I came to Pasco County 5 years ago, having spent most of my career in Maryland and helping to invent smart growth. I was a major author in much of the legislation in Maryland back in the 90s. And I was excited about coming to Florida, to Pasco County 5 years ago. And I was there for the last 3 years of my career. And an interesting couple things happened on the way out the door. The county manager in Pasco County, who was also retiring shortly thereafter, called me in her office one Friday afternoon at 5 or 6 o'clock and said, Chris, the developers own this county. As a way of encouraging me to not feel so bad, having been the person in charge of all of the smart growth, planning, development, implementation of comprehensive plan. And of course, I also managed all of the industrial, residential, commercial development and all the highway construction for a county of 580,000 people, the fastest growing county in Florida. So I retired and came to Lake County. Lake County is absolutely beautiful, and it's an environmental paradise, and it has a crazy cultural history, which needs a lot of work.
It does.
But I was also
Yes.
I was really struck by the political environment here that is so overwhelmingly monopolitical. Simply, it's Republican, and it's Republican what flavor Republican. And even in the city of Leesburg, which has people named Democrats in the majority, they don't behave like Democrats. They behave like Republicans.
Nope.
And they do because they are influenced. They have to be because they want to be reelected, and they're influenced by the people in the business around them. So I've been a student of government. I've been a student of political influence, and have tried at my hardest to further a lot of the principles you heard at the beginning of this evening in my job, in my career. And I'm an environmental planner. I'm an expert geologist and environmentalist. And I thought I could, in retirement, maybe get active in Lake County and make a difference. I still
Yeah.
think that's,
How'd that work out for you?
well, I've only been here a year, so I got a little more time.
Okay.
But it's
Okay.
incredibly frustrating and disturbing because the big news over here is the villages are moving south. And the villages are nothing
Oh, yeah.
more than a privatized Republican political environment to take away
Mhm.
the power from government, from the people and the voters, so that it's controlled by a body of board of directors of a group of very conservative, very wealthy people who are trying to just maintain control and influence in what they do. So I'm fascinated.
yeah.
I'm looking for ways to put the chink in the armor of our local elected officials, how to make a difference.
Okay. Well, here's one thing that I would do. When the villages starts asking for stuff that's just way out of line, and you'll know when it's way out of line. One of the things that I do all the time is go to lakevotes.com, where the county commission candidates have to file a list of contributors to their campaigns. So one of the cool things to do is just say, look, stand up at a public meeting and embarrass the hell out of them. I mean, that's what I used to do essentially in a column, is to say, well, of course they're voting this way. Here's who gave them money. And here's 5 or 6 or 10 of their employees who all use the same address, giving them money. And and just look at your elected official and say, who are you representing here? How is this good for us in the public, as opposed to good for villages developers? It's easy to do. Another thing that's pretty easy to do and was used very effectively in the recent primary is that fella down in Claremont beat longtime Leesburg County Commissioner Tim Sullivan. And one of the things he did was just go to the Florida Ethics Commission's website and look up financial disclosures, because all public officials in Florida have to file financial disclosures as to what the source of their money is and how much. And they found that sand mines, which were a big controversy here in Lake County, because we have more than your average county. Here's a guy who's accepting a $35,000 a year position on a board of directors for sand mines. I think that was a damaging piece of news. And it was simple. Go to the database, look it up. The same thing goes for companies. Like, you may see companies listed on contribution reports. Go to Sunbiz, which is the website that the state of Florida uses. Look up the names, look up the corporation names, see who's behind the corporation. Start piecing these things together. And weirdly enough, I did several columns on a guy named Joel Greenberg, who was the tax collector in Seminole County. And it's about the sleaziest guy I've come across in a bunch of years. He was just out, spending taxpayer money on ridiculous stuff. Buying his employees weapons, like they need weapons. But that guy hung himself in social media, as do so many people. You look up these folks' social media and all of a sudden you see, oh, well, there's Joel Greenberg and pictures of his wedding, and oops, there's like 3 groomsmen that he hired for the top $300,000 a year plus jobs in his office. So it's a matter of using patience and getting familiar with these websites. Had an early question that somebody sent, and I can tell you, the Lake Votes website is one that I use all the time. Sunbiz.org, lakecountyclerk.org. That's a website where you can look up anybody that was charged with a crime in Lake County is going to show up in court records. People that own businesses, that maybe have been sued, they're going to show up there. All kinds of stuff like that writ of certiorari. It's not a lawsuit. It's just a petition for a writ. But ooh, how interesting! It's just wonderful tidbits there. The Lake County Property Appraisers website. If you're wondering, like how the hell did this person at the edge of Bates and Avenue at Estes get permission for 49 lots that are about half the size of what the city of Eustis says they should be? How'd they do that? Well, my first question is, well, who owns the property? I mean, it's something they teach you in journalism school, and it's really simple. It's just follow the money trail, because that's going to lead you to where everybody's dumped that big pile of manure. And that's what's going to tell you what's motivating people.
Terry Sullivan had a comment.
I'm happy.
Lauren, I just want
Go ahead. I'm happy to take any questions.
I just want to know if any of these papers have a particular political persuasion. Do you feel it in the editorials or in the comments or in their reporting? Like the Sentinel of the commercial or the
Sure.
I'm sure the Villages has it, but
well, yeah.
The Sun.
Well, the Villages newspaper is owned by the developer. So the reason they created that newspaper back in the early mid-90s was because the Orlando Sentinel started covering them as a government, because they do have their own government up there. It's a weird setup that Florida did basically for Disney, and they picked it up. They're called community development districts, and they picked it up and used it. So in the Villages, it's pretty clear. I mean, you won't read anything negative about the Villages in the Villages paper. So yeah, they got a pretty big bias. In the Orlando Sentinel, in the Miami Herald, in the Jacksonville paper, sure, they have a bias. You're going to read it on their editorial pages. I mean, they're not shy about it. They're going to tell you what they think. Does each individual reporter have a bias? Now you're getting, you're getting pretty far into the weeds. But, you're also not stupid. Just read it and look at think critically about it. Look at where they attribute having gotten the information. If they attribute it to...
I had someone who was running for district here. I'd heard their interview given by the Orlando Sentinel. And he asked me how I thought it went and whatnot. And I gave my comment, and he said, oh, well, it's, he said, I know I didn't come off so well because it's a liberal paper. So I didn't know what to say. I was flummoxed on that because an overview of all of that, just to, I didn't think that that was fair. And he's running for office here, so.
Yeah. Well, people who are liberal say that the paper's conservative. People who are conservative complain that the paper's liberal. I mean, I've heard it so well. It's obvious. You have to admit it. Well, yeah, no, I really don't, because it's not. But again, there's ways to weed all that stuff out when you're reading or you're listening to it. I mean, if somebody quotes something from a report, chances pretty good that sucker's online somewhere. So you just go to your local government and pull that thing up. You'll be able to find it. You kind of have to hunt and peck around sometimes. But if you do it a few times, just check what the report says. You'll know. I mean, when you look at it, you'll form your own opinion and you'll decide whether they presented that information with an unbiased, flair or with with an opinion.
That's right.
The Sentinel I think the Sentinel is not liberal, but that's just me.
Carol Armell, did you have?
They.
Minute. When Lauren's finished her sentence.
Okay.
They what?
No, I'm done. Go ahead, Carol.
No. Well, I'm going to do a slight change of subject, which is to follow up on Kristen's questioning. I'm also fairly new to Florida. Are there strong state environmental laws that some of us could use to try to slow development here in Lake County, or at least have it be respectful? I know that there is a lake here that was set aside as conservation property, and then apparently one corner of it's been allowed to be built on because of developers own Lake County. But are there laws in the statewide that could help us out?
There are laws. Unfortunately, every law is subject to interpretation. And I think that's where the biggest problems have come in. And also Governor Scott cut the county's or the state's Department of Environmental Protection by more than 60% during 60% fewer people work there. So there are fewer people to look into complaints. There are fewer people to enforce rules. It's pretty much a free-for-all out there right now.
I wanted
I'm
to make
sorry
one
to say.
comment. Just
Okay, go ahead, Diana.
In response to Carol, my husband was a very good attorney. And when we moved down here from New York, he did get his license in Florida. And his comment was that Florida has excellent laws. The problem is nobody pays any attention to them. They just do what they want. And would you agree with that, Lauren?
Yeah, in a lot of cases, I think you're right, Diana. And I just wonder if you could share maybe just in a couple of sentences what your experience was. We've got, Diana and I both live in the Lake Gem area, and a family moved in and decided that they were just going to go ahead and build a dog kennel without bothering to get any permits or anything of the sort. I just wonder if you can, if it's even possible, you could boil down or maybe just point out, one instance of what happened to you when you were trying to hold government to its own laws. I think you've done a great job, but it's taken you a lot of time. Maybe you could even just share the time period.
First of all, this is a neighborhood where no business is allowed, period, end. Much less a kennel business with 20 some odd dogs that are barking all the time. Now, I've had good cooperation from the county code enforcement office, but they are the only ones and they have limited power. All they can do is, after all this months of rigmarole, they have slapped these people with a fine, which is a lien on their property of $100 a day. And these people are trying to fight it. I don't think they are, but they just keep letting it build up and build up. And and the county never collects these fees. The only time they get the fines is if, you know, somebody sells the property 20 years from now, then they take it out of the proceeds. The sheriff's office is totally useless. The animal control has no, they don't have, the laws do not permit them to rein in these dogs. They can only respond to abuse and neglect. And in fact, these people don't have to let any officials on their property at all. So the bottom line is, although these people, after came here on February 23rd and started getting fined on July 2nd, they're still, nothing has happened. They still have the dogs. And my only possible recourse at this point is to hire a lawyer, which is extremely expensive, and I haven't found a good one yet, that is a very good litigator, like my husband was, to sue them for loss of enjoyment of my property. But this is extremely expensive. So.
Right, yeah. And Diana, can you just estimate for everybody the number of hours you might have put into this since February?
Lord.
What do you think you put in?
Oh, Lord.
I know.
Well,
Think about it for a minute.
these are my files right here. And every bit of this is, you know, typed by me or written or spent time acquiring documents from the county. So I can't tell you how many hours, but I can tell you it about consumed my whole life for from February 23rd until probably July 17th or June 17th. About, yeah,
Right.
till the end of June anyway. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Well, I think you're a perfect illustration of my point that it's, no matter how hard you work, it's just hard in Lake County to hold government accountable. And that's why I'm even suggesting that very rude method of embarrassing the hell out of a public official if you can, right in public. I mean, because that seems to be the only thing that gets their attention anymore. Do we have some more questions, Henry?
I do
I don't
want to
see
give
any other questions.
I do want to say that the director of code enforcement has been extremely helpful and supportive. It's just that he has, and I think he's an unusual county employee in wanting to help, but his power is limited. So
Okay.
I just want to give him a shout out.
All right. We do have a couple comments in the chat that I'll mention, and if the people want to chime in and say any more about it, they can. We have one from Karen West, and she says the WMFV is now NPR for Lake, Sumter, and Marion counties, and it's getting better all the time. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that.
Glad to hear that. Is that still 90.7?
I don't know. Karen, do you know?
It is 89.5.
89.5. Well,
And
that's
it's much
good.
better reception because they bought a broadcast studio in Ocala, so it reaches us.
Great. That's good news.
And they hired a young man who is responsible for this area. So it's a matter of educating him.
Aaron,
Jane Hepting, did you have another comment on this? Jane?
I have a question. Is it okay? I've got a question.
Okay, sure. Terry has a question. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, I've been keeping track of the COVID numbers. You know, I've been going by zip code, and then sometimes I go like Mount Dora area and whatnot. So you're telling me that, you know, me trying to keep track of these numbers are not even accurate. So, you know, what's the point of finding out how many people have it in Mount Dora, our little small area, you know, versus Eustis and Tavares and all of that?
No, I don't think that's correct. The report to which I was referring is a kind of statewide report or area-wide report that goes out from the federal government. And basically what they do is look at the trends and the numbers and make a report to the states, to the governor and so forth. And it's just intended to help them decide what's the best way to fight COVID. But the numbers, I know some people say the numbers are wildly inaccurate. I don't think that's the case. I think they're pretty close. I mean, there may be a few here and there that are not just spot on, but I do think it's worth your trouble and that the numbers are pretty solid.
I go on the
especially
dashboard. So I use that a lot, and then you're able to put in your zip or
right. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yes, Jane.
Jane, you've got a question.
Well, at least a comment. I see Michael J. Watson, Pastor Michael J. Watson, is on our Zoom tonight, and he is someone who did persevere, who did make government accountable by standing up over and over again at county commission meetings and speaking against the statute coming here, and also organizing public demonstrations against it. So thank you, Pastor Mike, for doing that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I would say the same thing. Talk about using that technique of at least trying to embarrass these folks. And like I said, it's hard to embarrass them if they've got no shame. It's pretty difficult.
We have a couple of other, go ahead, Pastor. Do you have something to say?
Yes, I just want to thank Lauren for her articles during the time when we were going to the county commissioners and the cities. We would read your articles at times, and they were very supportive of what we were trying to get done. So we really appreciate that, and it did make a difference.
My pleasure.
A couple times we looked and they said you were tired, so we said, "Oh no." Thanks to Jamie and so many others, Lake County Voices of Reason, that really helped us, and we thank all y'all for the support.
We do have a couple other comments.
Thank you.
I don't want people to think that I've neglected them from Lauren's point of view. Another person, Karen Salvat, says that she came to the meeting late and wondered if we had talked about single member districts. Is that something you want to say anything about, Karen or Lauren?
Yeah, I could comment on them. I think at least some single member districts would be great. I don't know that I'd want an entire commission of them. Perhaps, if we went to a charter county and increased the size of the commission, I mean, there could be 5 single member districts and 2 at large or 3 at large. I think one of the great shames of this county today is that there has never been a person of color elected in a county-wide election.
Okay, can I just...
And a single member district gives a better opportunity for that. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, what I would just like a comment on, it's just so hard to run in a county that's as large as ours. And at least if we could run in our district, we would have more people who would be willing to run. And maybe we would be more successful in getting some diverse outlooks for our county. And I just think it's something that I've thought about for a long time, and I would love to see us move forward with it at some time in the future. I think Winter Park is now voting on it this election. So thank you for your comment. Maybe there's other comments from other people.
Anybody else?
Diana, you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm commenting to Lauren. She wants to retire, but I'm wondering if she might be willing to put up something like a Facebook page where people could ask her questions like we're asking her right now. So she wouldn't have to, she'd only respond to what she wants to, and it would be spontaneous and it wouldn't be a lot of work.
I actually do get a lot of questions through Facebook. And people will write me, lots of people, for some reason, people who live east of Eustis tend to use Facebook a lot. And I've gotten lots and lots of questions, particularly about zoning and other things out that way. And I do try and answer everyone that I can or that I know something about. And if I don't, and chances are pretty good, I've been out for 7 or 8 months now, chances are pretty good I don't know about a specific issue, but I can coach you through how to figure it out, how to work it out and get information and go about, either approving or protesting. And I do that a good bit. So, after tonight, if you have a question, I'm always willing to talk.
Thank you. Diana, there's a message in chat, maybe you've seen it, maybe not, to check your chat box for a private message from Chrissy.
No, Chrissy was saying that she's going to hopefully be my representative, but I'm in Sabatini's district, so no chance.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Lauren lives across the road from me on the north side, and she's in Chrissy's district. I live on the south side. I'm in District 32. The line goes right through our road.
I have one other from Mamie D. Melvin. I don't know if she wants to say any more about this, that she stopped taking the Daily Sun years ago because of bias. So that's a comment from Mamie.
Right, I can understand that. The Daily Sun is very pro-developer, and it's because the developer owns them.
Mamie, did you want to comment on?
I'd like to comment to Karen Selvett and to others. Stephanie Dukes made it through the primary and is running against Anthony Sabatini. And she is a lovely former educator who is African-American and well-grounded in Florida politics. So with a little luck, maybe a whole bunch of luck, we'll have somebody in District 32 to represent us in the state legislature.
Okay, thank you. And Jane Hepting is asking, how can we reach you, Lauren, through an email address? Is there a best way to reach you? And if so, what might be your email address?
Yeah, it's Lauren in Lake, LaurenInLake. It's all one word, Lauren in Lake @AOL.com.
Okay.
And if you can't get me there, just post something up to me on Facebook, and it might take me a few days to get to it, but I will reply.
Okay, thank you. And before I turn this over to
Sure
Russ again, does anyone have another question that they want to raise their hand about? I don't see any. Okay, Russ?
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren, for a very interesting and stimulating discussion. Makes me think we should do this again.
My pleasure. I thank you for asking me. I've spoken at the church before, and it is always a pleasure to speak to people who think and who are willing to share their thoughts in a civil way. I am very grateful.
All right, we look forward to welcoming you once more at our congregation. Before we go, I need to thank some people. I again extend our gratitude to Jane Hepting, who is just tireless in her work to bring good people and important people to this series. I need to thank our technical team, Kristen Hughes, Val Rosado, and all the people, Henry, and all of those who work so hard to make the magic work for us. And I would invite all of you to join us 2 weeks from tonight on November 8th, when our speaker will be Carol Clendenin, who is a licensed mental health counselor, and she will be speaking on the ongoing mental health crisis in Lake County. Until then, as Lauren says, engage, be a critical reader and a savvy voter, stay informed, and join with us as you use in always siding with love. Good night, all, and thank you for coming. Stay safe.
Good night.